So we're here to take a look at the premiere episode of Showtime's new comedy series, Kidding, which brings Jim Carrey back to regular series television, teaming him back up again with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Helmer, Michel Gondry, in what is a really, really good, solid start. If you're a fan of the heartbreak and emotion and humor of that film, it's translating very well so far, one episode into the series. Again, I'm not going to go super crazy about it. There are a couple rules that I apply to a first episode, so I'm going to apply them here. First, we're going to take a look at the characters. Do they do a good job in introducing us to our characters? And we have some very interesting characters to look at. First off, Jim Carrey's Jeff Pickles / Jeff Pickles / Mr. Pickles. The 2018 fictional version of Mr. Rogers, who is dealing with the heartbreak and tragedy of having lost his son in a car accident a year ago. His wife, who he's estranged with, who's driving the minivan, his son Phil and his twin brother Will were in the car. They were playing around. Will had detached Phil's seatbelt before the car accident happened, so we see the makings of a lot of tragic things that are really coming to play. And with Jeff, what we do is we see the dual nature that for so long has been very comfortable, coexisting nicely, the Mr. Pickles world and the Jeff world. And we are now seeing with this tragedy that Jeff is having a hard time reconciling two different lives, and he to deal with the hardship and pain, to get control back in his life, he's having to merge those worlds together. Unfortunately, he's got some co-workers and family members, actually, also, who may have some issue with that or who have other perspectives in play, specifically Seb, who is the executive producer on his show, but also Jeff's father, who really wants to emphasize this importance of keeping the two worlds separate. And we can see it up front as being more selfish, businesslike. That's not how I see it. I see it as a father who's really trying to help his son cope with a tragic situation the best he can, and who may be a man who isn't used to having those kind of coping mechanisms in play also. Very interesting to see how that father-son dynamic plays out. And again, very effective, and I thought it was very interesting, the scene where Seb is bringing the flowers to Phil's gravesite. And interesting how the bees don't really seem to be bothering Seb. I thought that was very interesting. We see Catherine Keener as Deirdre, the head puppeteer, and also Jeff's sister. Very interesting dynamic, and I'm going to get to in a second, involving her daughter Maddy, and her husband Scott. But we see Deirdre as the hardworking mom, the mom who, she doesn't want to apply the things her brothers talked about on the show. She tries to do her own thing, but she seems to be developing a way to be an effective mom to Maddy that kind of merges the Jeff Pickles world and the reality of things. Again, very interesting build-up. I like what I see of the character. Cole Allen as Will and Phil, very interesting dynamic because of where his anger lies. He has this helpful anger towards Jeff, and this idea of, when he keeps referring to him as, quote, pussy, and I'm going to say that because they use it quite often and it's important for the series. But also this idea of him, cutting down the bee and the wasp nest and wanting to put it into his mother's car. A very interesting way how his anger is playing out. I almost feel like he wants to help his dad as a weapon to get back at his mom for everything. Again, just a lot of unrealized resentment that's in play. Maddy I love because I just love the idea of she's already well smarter beyond her years. And the situation she plays into the storyline I'm going to talk to in a second, that was an important one of a side storyline, I think is very key. And with Judy Greer, who I love, who can do no wrong, I loved her when she was in I'm Sorry, as Jeff's wife, who is driving the car, who in her own way is dealing with with the pain of having lost a son. She has a new boyfriend. She gets a tattoo of Phil's name on her breast. Her and Jeff are estranged. These are two people who are dealing with the grief in their own separate ways, and that grief dealing may not result in them being together, contrary to what Jeff may want. And we see kind of eerily, and I hope, but not surprisingly, with the whole buying of the house next to her, but that goes without saying. So I think we see the loss and how that plays out in the family dynamic. The idea that there is a show family that does translate to an actual real-life family, I think, is very interesting. The side storyline I had talked about was a story where Deirdre and Maddy were in a mother-daughter war over vegetables that ended up turning into a story where Deirdre's realizing that her husband has not come out of the closet, and he has a lover. And this realization and how that's going to play out, I think, is going to make for a very important and heartbreaking secondary storyline, depending on how it goes. Very interesting to see if the family dynamic is important, that there's a way they adjust to define it and allow everybody to be open. Again, very curious to see where this goes and all this. But the most important thing that I took out of this, out of everything I would say, is Jim Carrey's performance as Jeff and where we see this going. There's such a beautiful moment where he films an episode that addresses his son's death. And we know going in it's never going to see the light of day. And some people may say, well, that's very cliche. And the fact that it wasn't surprised doesn't take away from the importance, one, of Jim Carrey's performance during that scene. And secondly, it serves as the catalyst for Seb saying to him, look, you can't be one person. You have to be two. Mr. Pickles has to be here. You have to be here. And that's just the way it is. It's the catalyst Jeff needs to start merging the personalities into his own sense of independence. And we see that at the end. It doesn't get more obvious than the shaving of the hair just after Seb had talked about his haircut and his look and everything being a trademark of the show. I think that was essential, and I think that was a key with the episodes moving forward. I mentioned before about the buying of the house next door to where his estranged wife lives. I'm very curious to see that plays out. I do think it has the potential to be a little sitcom-y, but again, first episode rules, taking it all into consideration, there is no reason to not want to continue on with this series. I think it shows quality acting, quality storytelling. It builds up a lot of characters that we want to see. There are a number of characters in just one episode I've already seen that I would like to see get their own episodes, and that I think says a lot. But Kidding is a very, very strong start. Very impressive outing by Showtime, and I'm looking forward to checking out the remainder of the episodes.